How do we get out of it?
So, yes, how do we come into a greater understanding of self?
Well, I have to reference this. This is the work that I put in. That the answer to your question is here. You know, I distilled this information down so that you can connect everything, so that you can understand that why there's so much confusion is only based on misinformation. Misinformation is the main reason why everybody is divided on who's who and what's what. So what has to take place is the information that's significant enough to divide people has to be boiled down to the most basic compound on what its values and principles are, so that you can see it for what it is, not what it became later through different cultures and belief systems, what it really is, you know. Because once that's done, then you can implement that practice, whatever it is, belief system, understanding, whatever. You can do it without labeling yourself. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a this. I'm a that. I practice chemic science. Stop putting a label.
Right.
And just practice the art. You know what I'm saying? Because people are caught up on labels. So the misinformation and the labels are a big determining factor on why everybody is going so many different directions except for the same. You know what I mean?
Right. So, in other words, in a lot of ways, we are being tricked up because of images and ego.
Right.
Because, you know, you're like I spoke with you earlier,
Right.
you'll have brothers debating on topics that's based on the ancestors or ancient wisdom, but that's really not saving us as a people, because the thing is that we need raw information based on spirituality, as not just as a collective but as an individual, because
So let me address that. That's part of the problem. The problem is people aren't trying to apply the information they're seeking. They want to learn about kinetic science, but apply it how? How does it benefit us? How does it benefit the whole situation of the people you're trying to inform? So if it's just the philosophy and just the thought, then we need to go ahead and just leave that into your own personal life.
I like that.
You know what I mean? Because like you said, it has to be something you can apply and live now. You know what I mean? So it's no good if I can't make it benefit everyone and myself. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, because a lot of times when I hear a lot of brothers that speak who are they're intellectualized, you know, I'm not going to take that from them.
Right.
However, they speak on a lot of philosophies like you just mentioned, but they never really speak about application.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the thing is that for a person such as myself, common sense, I need to learn the basics of application so I could be a doer, right?
Exactly.
That's just like, I'm going to quote what one of my brothers said, you know, it's, you know, like when I read your book, right? When I read your book, I'm going to get what I understand out of your book, and then I'll be able to share it from my understanding of what I've read from the book, right?
Yes.
And the thing is that we all have a understanding that we can get from the book that we can bring to the table. But see, the thing is that I truly believe that we have to get out of this diaspora of the white man. Because when I say diaspora, that goes back to the circle that I was mentioning, right? Because diaspora simply means from being from one extreme and then being dictated to another extreme, right? It's almost like a in and out, right? Or a reversal, right? We have came into a reversed thought or understanding instead of, because even like when you think about American history, right? Slavery, right? To me, that's the post-history.
Well, it's actually the most significant part, because that's where the misnomer comes in. That's where,
okay.
Yeah, that's where the big left turn comes. I mean, because you have Alex Haley, you have Roots, you have Paul Cuffey not being talked about, shipping out thousands of black Aboriginal indigenous Americans to West Africa, creating Sierra Leone.
Right.
We don't hear that history. We think Sierra Leone was just Sierra Leone. No, Sierra Leone was created by the indigenous black Americans being shipped out after a certain period of slavery, creating a colony of indigenous blacks in a country called Africa they were not indigenous to. So this is why you have a misnomer insistence on being labeled African American. And I'm going to drop something on you that Dane Calloway drops on a lot of people, and anybody who's a Pan-Africanist or a Kemetic science philosopher, they don't like Dane Calloway because he challenges them and they don't like to be challenged. And what he does is this: he lets you know that by accepting the misnomer of African American, you're classifying yourself as an undocumented immigrant.
Right.
And by doing that in the time of DACA and the time of Trump and the time of Build That Wall and the time of all the political shit around immigrants, you have to understand you're setting yourself up for failure.
Right, right.
Because now you're saying, I'm African American. You're saying I'm an undocumented immigrant. You bought into the misnomer of Alex Haley and the slave masters telling you you're from way over there and this is that, and they ain't telling you actually your people are Cherokee and Seminole and this and that, and why it's why your grandfathers and grandmothers told you we're Cherokee. Where do you think that comes from? Niggas trying to be niggas trying to be Indian? No, black people are indigenous to America.
Right, right.
So this is information that's missing, and it's a major piece of the puzzle. Because as long as they got you thinking on some Kemetic science, you looking this way, and the 52 fake out is coming right here.
Right.
So it's the disease of the misnomer.
So words, knowledge is power. So we gave up our sovereignty not by a signed document, but just by a verbal expression.
Yes.
We've given up our sovereignty.
That's why everywhere you go, they make you check a box. Everything you fill out, they want to know what category do you put yourself in, because then that will give them the demographic on who you are and how they can treat you accordingly to your status.
Right.
Because an immigrant from another country here with a dual visa on a business, on a school, he got way more benefits than you. He can come in here, he can get an immigration business loan, he can get a business grant because he's an immigrant. Because he's from another country, he gets all kind of benefits.
Yes,
but us
sir.
Here, struggling descendants of slaves, we get no benefits. Why? Because you're accepting the misnomer of an African American. That man's an African. He didn't come over here African American. He got a dual citizenship.
Right.
So why isn't an African considered an African American if he has dual citizenship?
So when you give up your sovereignty and you swear on a birth certificate that you're African American, basically what you're doing is saying that I'm open for any type of mistreatment or any type of racism or inequality or whatever, all those dynamics.
I accept the title that I'm 3/5 human according to the Constitution. When you say I'm African American, Constitution's written exactly very clear as day on who it's for and who it's not for. And in that same Constitution, you're 3/5. So if you want to be African American, 3/5, undocumented immigrant, go for it. You're gonna reap the repercussions of being in that category. Because in America, you get treated according to your political status.
Right.
Right? So remember that. That's a political status. African American, undocumented.
Okay.
That's a scary status, man. You don't want to be in another country undocumented. You know what I mean?
Right.
So this is why the misnomer African American, they push it on us. They push it. Because now you're seeing it. DACA, immigrants, build that wall. Now it's all about, are you legally here? So now 2020 has to come around before you realize African American was the worst thing you could ever call yourself.
Right.
So now you just set yourself up to get de-fucking-ported on some Paul Cuffey part 2.
So again, subconsciously, we trying to identify with something that we're not.
Forget my speech.
No, it's okay. We're trying to identify with something that we're not.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we don't do research.
Exactly.
We don't read.
No.
We don't try to understand. We don't want to make sacrifices. And when
we don't want to change.
We don't want to change. However, when we're mistreated or felt like we haven't been dealt with fairly, again, as I stated in one of my other videos, we complaining. Not a complaint, but complaining. You know, like I told the brother before. Now I got to stick a pacifier in your mouth because you're complaining and I hear you crying.
And there's no solutions and there's no actions. So people will have the argument, oh, but there is slaves who came from Africa over here. Very, very true. But not enough for you to claim the whole population. Matter of fact, not even a major part of it.
Oh, so what you're saying is that there were already Africans here before the so-called quote-unquote slave trade.
There was 3 types of black men or black people here. There was the Moors, there was the Africans, and then there was the black indigenous people of America. So,
See there, Leimart Park. I've learned something today. That this here so-called slave trade, that we all came here as slaves. No, we were here already under sovereignty and free.
yes, sir. That's why you're gonna have people in your family tell you you're Cherokee, and you have to let that ring bells. You know what I'm saying, because you can't claim something you're not, and just to remember that, you have to say to yourself, where did I get this information from about slavery? Roots? The school district? What other source of information do I have on slavery that I can validate what they telling me?
And didn't you tell me earlier that Roots, that was written by the brother Alex Haley, he stole that from a fictional character?
Yeah, he stole it from Harold Corlander. He was a white, fictitious book author. He wrote a book called The African. Alex Haley had to settle out of court for over $500,000. The judge told Alex Haley on documented paperwork, the judge said, I've never seen plagiarism this clear. He said the only difference between your book and Harold Corlander is the cover. That's the only difference. All the way down to Kunta Kinte is a fictitious character and a fictitious story.
Right on, brother.
So,
and you learned that by research.
Yes, sir. It's online. You can find it. It's in books somewhere, but you just have to connect those small pieces to that big puzzle.
Yes, sir.
And they shatter it and they spread it out thin, so you can't figure out the truth. You know what I mean?
And I'm Leimart, Common Sense from Leimart Park.
Thank you, brother.
And I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
I honor you, and I respect you.
Likewise.
Because you could have been anywhere else other than here, talking with me, but you found yourself right here, right now, at Leimart Park.
Right on.
Peace and blessings, God.
Peace and